Good afternoon to all those participating. I should say good morning to those of you who are in the West Coast, the Central Time Zone. Good afternoon to those of you who are in the Eastern Time Zone. We have two very special guests today. First and foremost, Eylon Levy. And I know that many people have requested the opportunity to have a briefing with Eylon. Eylon officially is one of the spokespeople for the government, for the Israeli government, but many of you have seen him on multiple news channels, on networks, both in America, the BBC, Sky. To put it mildly, he gets many challenging questions, but he's extremely articulate and has a way of really defining, contextualizing the narrative that not only to those who are pro-Israel, but to those who may not know what's happening in the Middle East. He really frames things in an incredible way. And that's why it's a blessing for us to have Eylon with us today. And as well, we have Major General Nadav Padan. And Major General Padan is going to be doing an analysis both on what's happening in the north, in the south, what's happening in Judea, Samaria, as well as throughout the Persian Gulf, throughout the Middle East. At this point, though, we want to turn it over to Eylon. And Eylon, thank you. You're joining us from Tel Aviv, and we're very grateful that you're spending this time with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me to give this briefing, and to such important supporters of Israel as well. We are in our darkest hour, and in some way our greatest hour as well, as we see on display the incredible heroism of the Israeli people, everyday heroism. When I talk on TV and media, we talk about the military and soldiers. Many of these people are ordinary reservists who've been plucked out of their ordinary lives, thrust into the most impossible conditions in Gaza. We want them back. We want them back safe and sound and going back to their ordinary lives, and the support of friends of the IDF as well in supporting them on the battlefield is absolutely critical. So before we start, I want to say a big thank you on that front. We find ourselves now at a critical stage of the war with Gaza. For 40 days now, this has been Israel's second longest war. After the War of Independence, if we don't count the War of Attrition, which lasted a good few years. It is by far the longest war that we have had in Gaza. And we find ourselves coming under assault on 8 different fronts. The Gaza Strip, where Hamas still holds 133 hostages, has been firing rockets at Israel, and we have intense fighting there to destroy the Hamas rapist regime. Judea and Samaria, where things are heating up. Lebanon, which has subjected us to hundreds of rockets since this war began, and Hezbollah seems hell-bent on dragging us into a totally unnecessary war. Launches from Syria, problems from Iraq, problems from Iran, the Houthi terror pirates in Yemen, and of course the situation in the diaspora, and part of the fight that many of you, your kids who are on college campuses as well, are fighting, which is absolutely critical, and that is for the future of the free world support for the state of Israel against the enemies that want to undermine our democratic state, and in fact the whole of the free world. And so we find ourselves under assault not only on the battlefield as well, within the global diplomatic battlefield, that is where we're fighting, and now on the legal battlefield as well, with South Africa's despicable decision to literally play advocate for the devil. And the nation that has prided itself on fighting racism will now be fighting on the opposite side of the courthouse from us, fighting pro bono for the biggest anti-Jewish racists there are. And after the people of Israel suffered the bloodiest massacre of the Jews since the Holocaust, an act of genocide by any stretch of the imagination, we now have South Africa making itself criminally complicit with Hamas's war of genocide against us by trying to project Hamas's own crimes onto us and bog us down in a legal battle to dispel this abysmal blood libel, while we are busy bringing to justice the Hamas rapist regime and fighting to continue bringing back all of the hostages. And I know that many people around the world ask us, when is this going to end? When, okay, Israelis, you've had your fun. When is this war going to end? And we are going to the end. We are going to the end because this isn't, as some people in the United States might try to spin it, Netanyahu's war. This is a war that Hamas declared against us. And it's a war that the people of Israel are united and determined to win. Hamas started this war, and we are going to end this war. And we are going to end this war on our own terms. We're going to win this war, and we're going to win this war in a way that ensures that the Hamas rapist regime can never hurt our people ever again, and doing everything we can to bring all of the hostages home safely, because time is running out for the 133 hostages trapped in the Hamas terror dungeons. Time has already run out for 25 of them who have been murdered in captivity, and every second counts. And we're fighting because we know that there simply is no future for the Jewish people or the state of Israel in a world in which a violent army of terror can invade our communities at will, burn, behead, massacre, torture, mutilate, rape, and abduct as many people as they want, and get away with it. And those are the stakes of this war, and those are the stakes of the public diplomacy battle that I'm fighting from here in Israel. That if this war ends with Hamas still on its feet, it will feel emboldened to attack us again, knowing that the international community will tie Israel's hands and tell it that it has no right to defend itself, that it just has to lie back and take it. And we will not take it, because as Golda Meir says in the famous scene with Henry Kissinger in the fantastic movie that I hope you've all seen, we're not that little girl anymore. We're nobody's whipping boy anymore. And so Israel has a right to win this war. And what we need our supporters around the world to do is to give support and backing to world leaders who know that that is the case and have known that ever since October 7, when they lit up their parliament buildings in the colors of the Israeli flag. Israel has a right to win this war. And our allies are still behind us, and we need you to give them strength. The United States stands foursquare behind us, and the administration has said many times this war can end tomorrow if Hamas surrenders now, and that this will take as long as Israel thinks it needs to take, because this war has to end with the end of Hamas. We see other allies countering it in different terms. The UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, all saying that they want a sustainable ceasefire. But when you look at the small print, they say that sustainable ceasefire can only come after Hamas lays down its arms, and there is no room for it to govern Gaza the day after this war. And if Hamas is going to politely ignore that communique from the government of Australia and lay down its arms, then we're going to have to force it to do so. And the brave men and women who you've been supporting through Friends of the IDF are going to continue to do that. So we're going to fight to the end. And part of our challenge is to explain to the world the extent to which we really don't want this war. There is no one in the world that wants this war to end more than we do. Every parent, every friend of someone who is in reserves is absolutely worried sick that we're going to wake up tomorrow morning and everyone's heart drops with a statement from the IDF saying, cleared for publication, the IDF has updated the list of fallen soldiers. It's an update we get once or twice every day. We want this to be over and everyone to come home. We just don't have the luxury of retreating to safety and hoping this problem goes away, because it won't go away unless we make it do so. So this whole country is on very high alert at the moment as we come under attack on all those fronts, any of which can self-immolate at any given moment without much notice. And it's why we feel so embraced with the support that we have from you and the diaspora, organizations like FIDF. I know there have been so many delegations coming to Israel, and it is absolutely critical. One, to help prop up this country's economy, but two, to give the people of Israel tangible support in terms of volunteering projects to keep this country ticking, and to remind people here in Israel that we are not alone, that there is a whole Jewish world out there that has our backs, that wants us to win, and is fighting our fight. So on that note, I'll wrap up this section of the briefing and take any questions you have. Really feel free.
Yeah. Eylon, first of all, thank you. I have two questions for you. One is, the situation in Khan Younis is not quite like the situation in Gaza City. In Gaza City, everyone was told to evacuate, to go south. In Khan Younis, I understand it's much more challenging for the soldiers, because there are so many civilians that, so to speak, are in the way of the soldiers trying to weed out the terrorists, weed out the murderers. That's number one. If you could speak to that, elaborate upon that. Number two is a question that came from many of our participants. Yeah, they've been following you on social media. They've been following you over the course of since October 7th. If you could share some of the challenges you've had, whether it's the BBC, Sky News, some of the news agencies which are blatantly anti-Israel and blatantly manipulate the facts and manipulate the reality on the ground.
Excellent questions. First of all, the situation in Khan Younis. The IDF is now fighting a fight unprecedented in the history of warfare. No army has ever had to conduct a counter-terrorism battle in an urban area where the enemy has spent 16 years deliberately embedding itself under civilian areas. And of the 1,500 tunnel shafts that we have found, the overwhelming majority were inside schools, mosques, hospitals, even UN facilities. It's not like the battle with ISIS, which had only controlled these cities very briefly before the international community swooped in. It's not like Afghanistan, where their tunnels were out in the mountains. This is a unique challenge, and it forces the IDF to come up with unique and unprecedented measures in the history of warfare to try to keep civilians safe. Now, it's very difficult to protect civilians, not only when Hamas has an explicit human shield strategy and is deliberately hiding behind civilians in order to get them killed, but also in a reality in which the international community and the UN agencies that are supposed to help them are complicit with it. Because from day one, we've been urging civilians to evacuate to the Al-Mawasi humanitarian zone. We said Hamas has dug itself in all the civilian areas in Gaza. We want civilians to go to the one place where Hamas hasn't hidden itself. And instead, UN agencies have funneled people into Hamas strongholds, have condemned, this is amazing, really incredible, have condemned Israel for designating a humanitarian zone as a violation of international law. And then when Hamas fires rockets from outside of the humanitarian zone, they refuse to condemn Hamas. So we're expected to keep civilians protected when the agencies on the ground are doing absolutely nothing to protect them other than demand that Israel end this war with the Hamas rapist regime free and emboldened to attack our people again. So it's a unique challenge. It's a unique challenge that is costing us dearly, but we are determined to totally rout out the whole of Hamas's terror and governing infrastructure in the Gaza Strip and create a new reality that will bring security to the people of Israel and new opportunities for Palestinians who realize that terrorism is a dead end and has always led them to misery and will always lead them to misery. Now, from that to the media battlefield, I've actually been pleasantly surprised with the American media. All my interviews with American media have been positive. They've been exceedingly polite. They ask difficult questions, but from a place of criticism and wanting to know. Britain is a different story. I feel it's much more common in Britain for journalists to try to catch you with what are called gotcha questions, where they try to put you on the spot, knowing they'll get a headline saying, Israeli government spokesman admits, or Israeli government spokesman doesn't know. Well, they'll ask you, how many terrorists have you killed exactly? Give me an exact number. And when you say, well, I can give you a ballpark figure, they'll say, haha, so you admit you don't know how many terrorists you've killed. Or just bizarre questions. I had an interview where I was asked, you've seen footage of of hostages being abducted into the Shifa hospital. Do you have CCTV footage of the medical treatment they received? I had another interview where I said, I hope you're seeing the voices of Gazans who are speaking about how Hamas is hijacking aid and abusing them. And they say, the interviewer said, but you're not even giving Hamas, you're not even giving the Palestinians a chance to overthrow Hamas because you're bombing them. At what point you want to tear out what little is left of your hair and say if they haven't toppled Hamas after 16 years of its power, they're probably not going to, and we'll have to do it for them, and we'll build a better and new reality for them. So A lot of strange questions from the British media where they tried to catch you and catch you out. And the challenge is to be as calm and collected and composed and restrained as you can. If you can put them on the back foot and show what a ridiculous question they're asking, then you've done a huge part of the job. But throwing a fit, losing your temper never works in these interviews, because if they know that the interviewer has rankled your feathers, has made you lose your balance, then you come off as the unbalanced one. You come off as a little bit unhinged. And we can never do that, because we know that history, justice, morality, law, they're all on our side. And there's absolutely no reason for anyone to get under our skins.
Thank you. And thank you, listen, for taking the time to speak to us. You know, this population is made up of Jewish and Christian Zionists. And this is a population that obviously is very supportive. Whatever the Ministry of Defense asks of us, whatever ACA, which is, of course, the human resources branch of the Army, asks of us, except for Sunday when the banks are closed, within 2 to 3 hours, we wire transfer the funds. This is an emergency. This is a crisis. And we've seen a generosity amongst American Jews and American Christians that has not existed since the Yom Kippur War.
Absolutely.
And having the opportunity to have you as a spokesperson, and an incredibly articulate spokesperson, you know, speak to them, engage them, it just gives them the fuel, it just gives them the energy to continue supporting the needs of ACA, the needs of the Ministry of Defense. And all we can say is, please God, to look after these soldiers, look after Israel, because as you've articulated it very well.
Bring back the hostages.
Yeah, bring back the hostages. This is not a war between Gaza and Israel. This is ultimately going to define the destiny of the 21st century. This
Absolutely.
is a war of barbarism versus Western civilization. And Israel really stands at the front line.
Not even Western civilization, humanity, whatever civilization that may belong to.
Yeah, you said it well. Thank you. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you, and thank you
to you, the role that you play in really being the face of Israel. We're very proud of you to have you as the face of Israel.
Thank you. And thank you really to everyone watching who has donated and contributed in any way. We feel it here. This really is a moment of emergency and an inflection point in our history. And we're all going to look back at this moment and ask ourselves, what were we doing and did we do enough? And FIDF has certainly not only done enough, but gone above and beyond.
Thank you. All the best for, like you said, bring back the hostages and success to Israel.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you.
Major General Padan, we have not made it easy on you today in terms of what happened in Beirut yesterday, in terms of what's happened this morning in Tehran on the 4th anniversary of the death of Qasem Soleimani. A lot of things happening in the South. If you could share with us your perception and an analysis of what's been happening, as our participants are very, very eager to hear an analysis and an understanding of that.
So first of all, formally, I must say that Israel never took formal responsibility to the killing of Arouri in Beirut. But I can share with you that I don't spare a tear for him. Arouri was one of the leaders of Judea and Samaria. He was born north to the city of Ramallah, and since his very young journey as an independent human being, he started dealing with terror. He was the leader of a local group in Aurora, north to Ramallah, and then he was the commander of Hamas for the north part of Judea and Samaria, and then the commander of all Judea and Samaria. My unit had the privilege to arrest him about 20 years ago, and he spent time in Israeli jail, and they sent him out of the country to Turkey. And from outside, it started planning and raising money and creating relations between Hamas and other terror groups in Turkey at the beginning, and then with Hezbollah. You saw where was his office? His office was at the Dahya neighborhood, at the center of Beirut. It's the neighborhood that are 100% fully controlled by Hezbollah. To have an apartment in Dahya means that you have to have the permission of Hezbollah to have an apartment there. So Hezbollah is actually hosting inside the Dahya. It sounds like a easy thing. It's not. Hezbollah used to fight Palestinian terror organization in Lebanon. Fighting them to win the leadership of South Lebanon. We have to remember that former organization to Hezbollah, Amal, used to fight the PLO and the Palestinian terror group for years. And after the first war in Lebanon, when Arafat and his troop left Lebanon to North Africa, Hezbollah took advantage with Amal and push all the Palestinian group to the side. So for them to cooperate with Hamas as a Palestinian organization is not that easy. The common enemy, Israel, or was the building maker in that case. And again, for Aruri to have an office inside the Dahya means that Hezbollah respects him, means that Hezbollah sees him as a serious person that can help them create and elaborate their ability to launch terror all over the Middle East and especially toward Israel. He was second in command in Hamas. And although Israel didn't take formal responsibility, we declare from the very beginning that every person that were part of this murder or killing spree of Hamas have to watch yourself. And again, it's a huge break or damage at the structure of Hamas, the international structure of Hamas and the local structure of Hamas, and the ability to create so I cannot say that I'm satisfied from killing of a person, but it's definitely helped the fight against terror, and especially against the Hamas.
As we say in the vernacular, no one's saying Kaddish for this guy.
Nah, not at all. I mean, he was a bad person by all means, and then the other event in Iran is not exactly kind of event that Israel used to. Nobody took responsibility for it. My assumption that it's a local opposition. There were over 100 people that been killed and over 140 that been wounded. So that's a huge terror attack or huge attack. Most of the people that lost their life are civilians, support of the government or of the regime. But most of them are civilians. So I guess the Iranian will do the research. When we're speaking about Iran, we have to remember that Iran separates to few tribes that fighting each other for years. There is tribe at the south desert of Iran that have their own militia, and the Iranian military are not reaching to those places. So there is a lot of tribes and inside Iran fighting, regardless the fighting against the fighting against Israel. So it could be launched by different tribe and different organization inside Iran. As far as I can tell, it's not the kind of thing that Israel did. But if we're looking from a bird's eye view of what we're facing here in Israel, at the north and at the south, we can see that the Iranian involvement in what's going on and the direct direction that they sent to the region are getting closer and closer to the leadership of Iran. If it was running by general that's responsible for the Middle East at the beginning, now it's the central regime that take the decision. We spoke about it later in our briefing that the Iranian took responsibility last week, which is a change. Till then, they just supported the Hamas and the terror organization in the Middle East formally, and said that they have the right to launch those terror attacks. Nowadays, they took responsibility.
From your perspective and from the intelligence that you're analyzing, was Iran behind October 7th? Were they notified in advance of October 7th? Were they caught off guard? Or is that something hasn't been determined?
So I don't know for certain, but I can assume that the Iranian knew that Hezbollah training and developed those kind of strike. They support them by all means, by tactic planning, by strategic planning, by ammunition, by technology, by training their own leader in Iran and sending back to Gaza Strip. So the Iranians are definitely behind the October 7 attack. At the other end, I don't think that they knew about the specific date. It surprised them in a way. I can see it through the way that they responded the very first day to this strike. But regardless the specific date, they supported it by all means, by sending missiles, rocket, technology, everything that we see and touch inside Gaza Strip, all the ammunition we find at the storages, the drones, everything, have some kind of Iranian technology, some kind of Iranian backup behind it. So they knew that the Hamas is planning to launch attack toward Israel. That's the specific date, but and by the way, you could hear it from Nasrallah himself, that said that they didn't know about the date, and it surprised him. It surprised Hezbollah, and if it surprised Hezbollah, it surprised Iran as well. So, although we started with explaining how Aruri is having an apartment inside the Dahia, they probably didn't share everything. And even inside the Hamas organization, there is a very limited group that knew about the data, and I'm not so sure that Aruri and the outside leadership of Hamas knew about the specific date. They knew that they're about to launch the strike. They didn't know about the specific date. It seems to me, I don't know it for certain, but it seems to me that was happened. So if we'll continue from the Iranian to the north, we can see Hezbollah are in kind of shock and embarrassed from the attack at the center of Dahia. They declared that they will respond in their own way. But so far on the ground, we see the same kind of method. Nothing changed, which is a method that take in consideration that they are not succeeding killing soldier and civilian, and instead of trying to kill soldier, they're just destroying building and infrastructure along the border between Israel and Lebanon. And we saw it this morning in Israel, like we saw it yesterday and the day before. They are just launching anti-tank missiles and rocket toward the city of Shlomi in that case this morning, and toward the kibbutzim along the border. From the other end, Hezbollah declared today that he lost 142 terrorists. So they're kind of in shock from the ability of the IDF to target and eliminate the group of terror that tried to launch rocket, or after they launched the rocket, the hunting that the IDF was doing along the border it's from tactical operations perspective, it's really a success. It's really a success. So if you are a Hezbollah member and you're launching rocket or missiles along the border, you have to take in consideration that you won't get out alive from it.
You're not going home for dinner.
Not at all. We can see the same kind of effort of the Shia militia in Syria and in Iraq, attacking American bases and trying to launch rocket toward Israel. Yesterday, they launched 2 rocket toward the Golan Heights. Same group, same effort. Israel in that case are not only fighting or targeting specifically the Shia militia in the Golan Heights, the Syrian Golan Heights, but also aiming and attacking the local leadership of the Syrian, force them to take responsibility. So that what happened along the border with Syria the last day. There is a lot of effort in Jordan. Thank God the Jordanians so far are blocking most of the effort from transit or transacting into the main cities of Jordan, from there to the border between Jordan and Israel. There were two attempts to smuggle ammunition that have been blocked by Israel, but nothing more than that. If I go to the south, to Judea and Samaria area, there is an ongoing war in Judea and Samaria. I mean, nothing less than that. I've already said, and I'm repeating it again and again and again. I mean, regardless all the vote and the rate that the people that went out to the street after the elimination of Aruri, there is an ongoing war. Last night there were a huge operation at the area of Tulkarm, at the refugee camps, at the center of Judea and Samaria, and there were another operation in Nablus and another one in Jenin. And
for the sake of the participants, could you share geographically just how close Tulkarm, Kalkilia are to quote unquote the green line, to the Israeli communities?
So it's on the green line. And it's located at the narrow part of what used to be Israel till 67. You have to remember that from Tulkarm to the Mediterranean Sea, there is 12 miles. That's all. That's the nearest place in Israel. From Tulkarm, Kalkilia to Netanya, it's a 10-minute drive if there is no traffic. When we're speaking about Judea and Samaria and compare it to Gaza Strip, we have to remember that Judea and Samaria is in the heart of Israel, surrounding our capital, Jerusalem. And you can see the windows of the cities of Israel from the mountain and the hills of Judea and Samaria, the city of Kfar Saba, the city of the shore of Tel Aviv, everything. I mean, by the way, when you're getting into the chief of staff office in the Kiryat Tel Aviv, from his window, you can see Judea and Samaria. It's that close. And we cannot allow ourselves, or the Palestinian, regarding to your question, to have terror organization, that developed terror organization like we're facing in Gaza Strip or in Lebanon. But I mean, if it wasn't what have happened the last day in Lebanon and in Gaza Strip, the thing that the operation that are running for the last few weeks in Judea and Samaria, it's a war. It's a war by all means. And the Palestinians lost more terrorists than they lost the last 20 years since 2002 together. The Central Command are working in war mode for almost 3 months. I'm moving south to Gaza Strip. In Gaza Strip, there is an ongoing operation. Nothing dramatically changed over the last 2 days that I can update. The only thing that's been changed is the way that the IDF operate. We heard in the news that the IDF asking to withdraw from Gaza Strip a few of the reservist brigade, release them and send them back to the center of Israel, trying to balance between the national effort of Israel, understanding that it's a long war, it's going to take more than a year. And if we are having to launch a long war, we have to balance between our economy needs, the needs to run the civilian life. I've started describing what's happening in Gaza Strip right now. So the main change is that the IDF start withdraw reservist brigade from Gaza Strip and release those young men and women to go back to their businesses and help the economy of Israel go back to track. So that's effort going to continue, and we'll try to balance between our needs to win the war and our needs to continue with our civilian life in Israel, taking in our consideration that it's going to be a long war, and we're planning for a year at least in advance. And the idea is to bring reservists for a month or 2 months of service, and then release them back to their home. And that process will continue the next year, if not more than that. The last thing that I want to mention is the effort to release our hostages. Israel released today the information that during an attempt to release one of the hostages, Baruch, Sar Baruch, he was unfortunately been killed. We are not so sure who exactly killed him, if it was our special forces that reached to the building or the bullets of the enemy. But definitely we're sure that he was killed during the attempt to release him, which remind us that there is an ongoing operation parallel to the and part of the operation in Gaza Strip to release the hostages. So here and there we hear about special forces operation. I can tell you that there is a lot other operation that's running almost every week, trying to reach to the hostages. Unfortunately, in most cases, we're finding bodies. But this effort is one of the main efforts that we're dealing with in Gaza Strip right now. And again, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to the day after or the way it's going to run the next few months or even few years. The situation in Gaza won't allow Israel to withdraw fully from Gaza the next few months. We have a lot of work to do, destroying the subterranean system, getting and reaching to those storage of rocket and ammunition, and kill the terrorist. That's going to take time. In Judea and Samaria, for example, after the operation in 2002, it took almost 4 years to clean the whole area. It doesn't mean that we'll have to launch this full operation like those last 3 months of war. As has been mentioned, we start to withdraw the reservists out of Gaza Strip, not all of them, but part of them. And effort that we'll have to use to get to reach to those places will be smaller and smaller. So things that we're doing right now with a division, we'll do in a month with a brigade and then with a battalion.
You can just share people the numbers of a division, a brigade, and a battalion.
Battalion, it's around, if it's an infantry battalion, it's around 500 people. Brigade, it's around 3,000 people. Division could be 20,000 people. So the same thing that done today by 20,000 people will be done by 500 in a few months from now. That's what I'm saying. That's the process, that the development of the operation for the next few months. There is a lot of people that left their house, withdrew the house from the north part of Gaza Strip and moved to the refugees camp at the south, at the Mawasi area. We'll have to deal with that to prevent this part of the world from getting into a humanitarian crisis more than there is already going in Gaza. So that's going to be another effort. We're trying parallel to the war to reach to countries that want to be involved at the end state of Gaza Strip. But I can tell you 3 things about it. First of all, we won't be able to solve everything. It won't be a binary end to this war. It means that there'll still be terrorists here and there that we have to look for them. There will still be, unfortunately, hostages that we'll have to fight our way to release them. It's not going to be end at the end of the year. Second is you cannot run 2 million people without some kind of local leadership. So when people saying or declaring, or leadership declaring that they don't want a Palestinian Authority, they're speaking about the Palestinian Authority that we know in Ramallah. There will be some kind of authority in Gaza. You know, somebody have to run the school, somebody have to deal with the daily needs of the people, someone have to do the police work to arrest a robber or whoever it is. Somebody have to deal with it, and I cannot see it running by an outsider, either if it's Israel or other outsider. It's going to be an outsider organization that will support, guide, and control and guide the local leadership to run the daily issues and routine in Gaza Strip. There is one thing for certain, and that's the important part. Israel have to be responsible for the security of Israel. And the meaning of it, that we'll have freedom of operation inside Gaza and the ability to reach to those terror cells when we identify them and knows about them, even 5 or 6 years from now. Sorry. So we'll have to be there militarily. Doesn't mean that it's going to be a division at the center of Gaza Strip, but we'll have to have the freedom of operation inside Gaza Strip. That's what I'm saying. So most of the discussion right now is kind of political discussion. The practice of it is that Israel will have the ability to operate, and Israel and others will support local leadership to run the daily business.
Major General Padan, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. If there's no major drastic events happening in the next couple of days, we're going to be back with Major General Padan on Sunday. It'll be noon Eastern time, 9 o'clock Pacific, 11 a.m. Central time. And we'll send everyone an email about that briefing. As well, we'll be having a special guest together with Major General Padan for Sunday's briefing. In the meantime, please continue with the fundraising efforts. Literally today, before going on to this broadcast, we received another request from ACA, from the Human Resources Division of the Army. And please continue the effort. We want to thank you. Thank you for participating. Thank Major General Padan, as well as Eylon Levy, and wishing everyone a meaningful day, success for the soldiers, safety, security for the soldiers, and please God, the release, the emancipation of the hostages. Thank you.